We are in Athens, Greece, attending the ACI Europe General Assembly and Annual Congress. And next to me, I have the honor to have Olivier Jankovec, who is the Director General of ACI Europe. Thank you for being with me, first of all.
My pleasure, Theodore.
Olivier, I would like to ask you initially, out of these 2 days that we listened, very interesting discussion topics, what are the main key points and what are the main challenges that the airports and aviation industry facing these days?
Well, I think this event was about bringing together the airport community, our business partners, and our key institutional stakeholders. So that's why we were very keen to have with us the Transport Minister of Greece, Mr. Dimas, but also the EU Transport Commissioner, Mr. Tzitzikostas. I think it was important because we are at a crucial moment in terms of our industry. We have now finally fully recovered the traffic volumes that we had before COVID. Mm-hmm. So, 5 years to recover those volumes, that took a long time. But at the same time, so that's good news. But at the same time, I think we're facing quite a number of unprecedented challenges that are going to impact our industry moving forward, and that require airports, but I think not just airports, but the entire aviation ecosystem, to basically prioritize really resilience and future-proofing. Mm-hmm. And that's coming from the first element, that we now live in a new era of geopolitics and geoeconomics, where we're seeing the hyper-globalization of the past 30 years unraveling. And of course, aviation has thrived on globalization. We are a vehicle, an instrument of globalization. So that's a new reality.
Now globalization is changing. It's not exactly as it was before.
Well, it's unraveling. The world is fragmenting. Mm-hmm. There is more trade barriers going up, and the US is now a leader in imposing trade barriers. Governments are becoming much more protectionist. There is more restrictions to immigration. So all that obviously is going to affect the prospect when we think about travel. The second factor, the second macro factor, is of course climate change, because we're not going in the right direction. The planet is warming up. And that means that we're seeing demand patterns being affected. People might not consider certain destinations in the same way they considered it because it's too hot, for example, in the summer. We're seeing more and more climate events impacting the resilience of our airport infrastructure, and that's a new challenge for which we need to be prepared. And moving forward, we know that climate change will reduce wealth in society, which will have a fallback impact on demand for aviation. So in all of that, I think we have to be prepared for much more disruption, and also the prospect of slower growth of air traffic. So I'm not saying air traffic will go in decline. I'm saying that compared to a business as usual, if you wouldn't have geopolitics, geoeconomics, and climate change, our growth would be super dynamic, as it has been over the past 30 years. But because of that, we're going to have a growth that will slow significantly. We've done studies together with the Airlines for Europe and other aviation associations, and we see that between now and 2050, in particular because of the cost of decarbonizing aviation, the annual growth of aviation in Europe will not be 2% as we had anticipated, but 1.4%. So, a lot of challenges in terms of bringing more operational efficiency, operational resilience, a lot of challenges in terms of the impact of this slower growth on our economic model, and a lot of challenges in terms of securing the policy and financial support we need to decarbonize.
So there are, you mentioned a lot of disrupting factors. One of them is these geopolitical issues that are happening around the world, and this makes the role of the airports to change. Not only this, but many things, bringing the role of the airport to a new level. It's not just a flight hub an airport anymore. It's many more than that.
Yeah, I think that's not new, because if you look at the way airports in Europe in particular have transformed, what we've seen is over the past 30 years that airports have gone out of the remit of the states. Many airports have been privatized, partially or fully, and I think Greece is a very good example of that. And that means that airports have had to stand on their own feet, not relying anymore on public finances, but become businesses in their own right, abiding to fiscal discipline, and generate the funds needed to continue to invest in creating quality capacity. A lot of the investment in the past were about capacity. Now, clearly, a lot of investment are going to be also about decarbonization, modernization of our facilities, more quality, more digitalization as well. So I think we have seen airports becoming much more, commercially astute, clearly, developing new sources of revenue. Sometimes people ask me, but why do airports look like shopping malls? I'm saying, well, because, basically it's very simple. Because if we were relying only on the revenues we get from the airlines, we wouldn't be able to pay for the maintenance and development of that infrastructure. I mean, those developing alternative revenues is a sine qua non conditions to be able to finance our investment. And that's why we have the concept of airport cities. And I think a new thing that is coming up is the energy transition, which is a challenge because you need to reconsider the way you power airports, the way airports also supply fuel, sustainable aviation fuels in particular to aircraft because of decarbonization. But I think at the same time, this is also an opportunity because we are looking at potentially having airports becoming also what we call an airport, so energy hubs. So airports as centers of green electricity, green energy generation that could potentially not just serve their own needs and the needs of the airlines that use the airports, but potentially the needs of their communities as well. So there's a new chapter there that is still along the way that will take some years to materialize, but I think it's a very exciting chapter that proves that with every challenge there are also opportunities.
There are voices accusing aviation industry that is polluting.
Any human activity is polluting by essence.
I mean, compared to other industries,
yes.
let's say.
But I think we shouldn't put our heads in the sand. Of course, aviation has an impact on the climate in particular because it's a very energy-intensive sector. At the moment, globally, aviation represents 3% of global CO2 emissions. And you can tell me, or I could tell you, well, this is not a lot, deal with sectors that pollute more. I mean, for example, the fashion industry is polluting at least at the level of the aviation industry.
That's impressive.
The maritime industry and everything linked to digitalization also has a huge impact on CO2 emissions. But I think that's not the debate. That would be the wrong debate. Every sector, given the climate emergency that we're facing, has to do everything it can to contribute to decarbonization. And in our case, the issue we face is that for now, there is no magic wand to decarbonize aviation. We don't have today a new technology that would allow us to put on the tarmac at airports aircraft with zero CO2 emissions. We have to rely on different solutions to decarbonize. We have to rely on technology that is in development, that will take time to mature, and we have to rely on new sources of energy like sustainable aviation fuel that also need to scale up in terms of production and price reduction. So that means that over the next years, our carbon footprint relative to other activities which are able to decarbonize more quickly because they have the technology, our aviation footprint will continue to improve. And that's really a problem because we are going to be a bigger part of the climate change problem moving forward. So we need to move from being part of a problem to being part of the solution. And that's what really all the aviation industry, including airports, is really firmly committed upon. This is our priority number one. This is about our license to not just to grow, but to keep operating. It's about our societal license. So the challenge we face is decarbonize while maintaining the fantastic socio-economic benefits of air connectivity, because as we know, flying is part of our European way of life.
True, but some support that the solution, one of the solutions for this decarbonization, as we say, is to reduce the short-haul flights. We see this happening in France.
Well, I mean,
German airports also, they did not reach the
yes,
goal of...
but there was no imposition by the governments not to do short-haul fly. In Germany, there are a number of factors that are handicapping aviation in the country, in particular, very high level of taxation.
True.
Very high level of air navigation charges as well. A very dominant position of the hub-based airline, the Lufthansa Group. So, you know, that's a major factor why the German aviation market is underperforming. France took a very strange initiative to try to ban some domestic flights. In the end, I think they banned 2 or 3 routes, which actually were not, I mean, two of the 3 were not even served. So, you know, I think their measure is a bit like greenwashing. You know, it's trying to have a good conscience, but the impact of it is very minimal. And if you look at short-haul aviation, actually, this is the part of the sector that produces the less emission. The bulk of aviation's emissions come from the long-haul flights. Yeah. So if you suppress short-haul flight, you're not really solving the problem, but you're creating actually new problems in terms of the economic and social viability of regional communities in Europe. So, you know, it has to be, there must be a better solution because if you go for punitive action, you are going to create economical and social damage. And if you create economical and social damage, this is the best way to turn people against the climate agenda.
True.
And that's not what we should be doing. So we need to manage this huge challenge. It's a challenge for humankind, not just for aviation, in a way that remains inclusive, where we keep everybody on board and where we minimize as much as possible the socio-economic impact.
I heard one of the speakers speaking about the future of Europe that will be, let's say, the holiday hub of the rest of the world, you know, the way Europe is developing now. If we don't do something to solve the situation that is happening here. So the European airports nowadays are main stakeholders in opening new markets and, you know, working with the governments and other stakeholders of the travel industry. How about the Asia Pacific region? Will that be the solution for Europe and aviation industry in Europe? Well, you know, to increase the connections with the Asia Pacific?
Yeah, I think it's clear that, you know, I think your first statement that, you know, Europe is, it wouldn't mean that Europe is a mature market for aviation and that there's not much growth left in Europe. I would challenge that. I think the western part of the European market is indeed a market, an aviation market that is maturing, where people use aviation quite a lot. But the eastern part of our continent is still a market where the propensity to fly, so the number of trips that people take per year, is still very low, because those economies are developing, air connectivity is developing, and that means we have significant growth opportunities within Europe already coming from Eastern Europe. But having said that, you know, I think the epicenter of global aviation is, of course, moving towards the east. You know, the US North Atlantic market used to be the leading market. Europe was a leading market together with the US. But of course, we have a continent with a huge population where people are improving their living conditions, where they have more disposable income. We have middle class is booming. We've seen it in China. We're now seeing it in India and in the rest of Asia. And these are the markets of tomorrow in terms of growth, obviously. And today already, I think since 2017, if you look at airport traffic globally, since 2017, Asia Pacific has overtaken all other world regions in terms of the passenger volumes, and that will continue. So, of course, finding a way to maintain and further develop our air connectivity with that part of the world will be very important.
During the conference, I heard two threats in aviation industry.
Only?
Well, many probably, but I keep two of them.
Yes.
One was the cybersecurity.
Yes.
I was very surprised to listen to one of the speakers saying that cybersecurity was on the fourth position in the past in terms of threats that we're receiving, and now it's on the second position.
Yes.
That's scary a bit.
Yeah, well, yes.
The other one, before you start commenting on this, the other one was the shortage of skilled workforce.
Yes.
So what are your comments on those two?
These are two extremely relevant challenges, clearly. On cyber, it's links to the new geopolitical environment in which we live. As you know, we're now seeing state actors using that kind of threats and weapons to bring disruptions with countries with whom they consider that are not aligned. And of course, airports are critical strategic infrastructure, so I can tell you that airports are regularly the victims of cyber attacks, and that we see the numbers increasing. And it's clear that we see all airports boosting their cyber resilience and looking into this. The difficulty is that, you're always trying to catch up a train that runs very fast. And I think that was said also during the conference. It's a never-ending objective, to be ahead of the game on cyber. So that's very important. The second aspect, the workforce, I think we had a turning point with COVID. During COVID, as you may know, many airports didn't get a lot of financial support from states. So many airports had to lay off people reluctantly because they knew it would compromise the recovery, but they had no chance because the money was just running out. And therefore, when the traffic came back and it bounced back quite aggressively, we have problems getting people back to the airport, especially for operational jobs that are jobs where you have to work over the weekends, where you have to work on night shifts, because the people who in the meantime had left, well, they find other jobs, and probably they find other jobs in sectors where they considered they had a better quality of life, and they were no longer so keen to come back. And that, it's better now.
How are we going to attract more people to come and work with aviation?
I think there's two angles to respond to that. First, there's been an issue in terms of render those jobs more attractive. And the second aspect, I think, to try to address this problem is automation. So especially for the low-grade jobs, which are not very, where you don't earn a lot of money, jobs that are very repetitive, I think automation is going to be the way forward for the industry to partially solve this problem.
So, but I would like to finish our discussion with positive messages.
Yes.
So I would like you to tell me about the opportunities for the aviation, the opportunities for the experience of the travelers, of the passengers that they are getting through the traveling procedure in an airport?
Yes, I think as I mentioned earlier, travel and air travel in particular is really what brings Europeans together and what connects them to the world. And that is an essential feature of our modern societies. The slogan of the EU is united in diversity, and I think aviation plays a key role in united Europeans in diversity and exposing them to the fantastic diversity of our continent. So I think on the demand side, people will continue to want to travel, which is very good for our sector. I think we're very lucky because not all sector can rely on that, potential continued growth. I think we're working very hard to decarbonize. We need more support from governments and policymakers, from financial institutions. But it's a challenge we cannot afford not to win. And I think down the line we're seeing a fantastic transformation coming up at airports through the use of AI, artificial intelligence. We are going to see more collaboration across the sector. I think we have become much more passenger-centric and client-centric than what we used to be. And I think the challenge that we're facing are really forcing collaboration, new thinking across the board in the industry. So I think it remains a super exciting industry to work for, and I think we have an essential social mission that we will continue to provide and secure.
When will be the next conference and where?
The next conference is going to be, the next annual Congress and General Assembly will be next year in June 2026 in Prague, in the Czech Republic.
Nice.
So we look forward to having you with us.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Theodore.